Well, hey, Mim.
Hiya.
What's
How are
up?
you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. We've done 1 week in lockdown now, haven't we? It's actually gone
hmm
quickly. What have I
I
been
think
up
it's just
to?
the same.
Well, it
Really?
doesn't really change my life all that much at the moment, other than
Yeah.
I have to see people outside. Um,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, what have I been up to? Knitting, sure, of
hmm
course. Not a whole lot, to be honest. But yeah, how about you? What you been up to?
I've just, not much either. Just doing the usual. Like we're all in this like weird routine, 2020 routine, and I've just been doing what I normally do.
I actually watched some Princess Diana documentaries last week with all the
Oh,
fallout of, like the Martin Bashir famous BBC
yeah.
interview.
Because The Crown season four supposed to be coming out
Exactly.
soon.
Exactly. So which features obviously the young Diana. So I watched some documentaries on her and quite a terrible film that has Naomi Watts, I think, in it. Is that her name? I don't know. But yeah, I actually just feel really sorry for Princess Diana. I think she just kind of
Mm,
had just quite a sad life from how they portrayed it,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
But I was also going to potentially talk about her in a fashion story, but actually I'm going to talk about another member of the royal family.
Oh.
Um, but yeah, she was very much like a style icon, and I feel like she was the first sort of very like British, followed by the Paps,
Mm,
style icon, very different for royal fashion, and has like actually completely changed the face of the royal family a little bit. She made it
mm.
more humanized and stuff like that.
You know
Yeah.
what? Now that you've said that, it's reminded me that I did spend like last week watching Pose. Have you seen it?
No.
It's
Is it
brilliant.
good?
It's brilliant. Honestly, it's so good. Like, so for those of you who don't haven't watched it, it is on Netflix and it documents the kind of underground ballroom culture during the late 80s and early 90s. And obviously, it focuses on like a particular club. And ballroom is basically where gay men and trans women would kind of put on these, not shows, but they would almost be like club nights. And also, they would have competitions and see who was like, you have different categories and you could
Mm.
walk in these categories and almost like perform
Oh
for the
my
crowd,
gosh.
and it just touches on a lot of what was happening in New York at that time and what it was like being trans women and trying to pass as a quote unquote real woman at that time, and really interesting, but it's got so much like comedy as well.
Mm.
And the looks, obviously, like if you guys, if you've seen RuPaul's Drag Race, this is where drag culture originates from, and having different categories and dressing up and trying to like embody a certain category or a specific theme. And that's when you like see like real off the cuff creativity and making outfits at home and rustling up things together to put on a show. It's like real kind of creativity at its best. It's honestly, it's amazing. It's a good storyline as well. So you
Yeah.
should watch it.
Aw, I'll add it to my list of things to watch. But anyway, what is your fashion story?
So my fashion story, you've probably seen this in various places already. And if you follow Burberry, they have been posting new images of their like latest campaign, sort of working collaboration with Marcus Rashford.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people know, but if you don't, Marcus Rashford, he's 23 and plays for Manchester United. He's a footballer, young footballer, and over 2020 and dealing with lockdown and such, he has been a really big campaigner in providing free school meals for underprivileged kids who
Mm-hmm.
need it, come from poor backgrounds, and who really depend on school meals as one of their most important meals of the day. And so when kids went into, well, you know, we went into lockdown first, and then we had the school holidays, the summer school holidays. He was really campaigning for the government to provide like support for these kids. Like they still needed food, you know? So that's kind of how he's been like in the public eye for a few months now. And Burberry and him are joining forces to provide support for like youth centres in the UK and US, which is amazing.
Incredible.
And he's like been donning some of the latest Burberry wear in a new campaign.
Well, Burberry have got some like quite a lot of like new streetwear, don't they? Like they've kind of, you know, they've got bomber jackets and all of that stuff, and it's become a lot sort of like young friendly, but also like really, really cool.
Yeah,
which is quite fitting.
Burberry, the reason why it came out of fashion so much years gone by was that it was too closely tied to youth culture, sports culture.
Oh yeah, like the like yobs, yeah,
all of that. And there were a lot of Burberry fakes, and that was seen as at a time when
it was seen as really tacky when we were younger. It was so tacky, wasn't it?
But that's the thing, because it's all about perception. Because before, being linked to urban Black culture, or maybe sort of like chav culture, and like being linked with those sorts of things in the fashion industry at the time was seen as like, we're too good for that, you know? I can understand also there were a lot of fakes. There were a lot of Burberry fakes. And it's like when a brand, especially a luxury designer brand, like floods the market, that kind of over accessibility diminishes their like branding. So I can understand how that works. But I think what they're doing is doing this like 360 of like leaning into their very British form of streetwear culture. And I mean, Marcus Rashford being young, being a footballer, which is like the pinnacle of,
which is
like,
where it went downhill. Is like football yob culture. Was like, you know, all the football fans having a Burberry scarf around their neck, or an imitation of one, or whatever it was.
So I think they're leaning into it. I mean, great cause. I think the branding is looking great. I mean, that reminds me, they've come out with this like really upbeat fashion film.
Oh my god, it's incredible.
The Singing in the Rain one.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like their Christmas advert or their Christmas campaign, but it's so cool. It's so different for Burberry. Like this is coming from, and I really like Burberry, and I'm really glad that it kind of got restored back to where it should have been. It's a really classy, very British, obviously it's not produced here anymore, but really British heritage label that should be like seen as really classy. Like my parents have Burberry trench coats from like back in the day. They never wear them. They're like super old school, like full length. Like hopefully one day I'll inherit that from my mum. But like they were decked out, like I remember it was like a really, really classy brand, and obviously then it went sour for a little bit. But like even then, when it was on its sort of soaring path up, all the Christmas adverts were like really classy, weren't they? It was all about the trench. It was all about like a nice like wool coat and like a really beautiful, perfect human in the advert. And that was kind of like this prestigious thing. So to go from that and like Cruz Beckham and like all these people who were just like beautiful in their adverts, and don't get me wrong, these people are still beautiful, but it's really cool. Like it's really, really cool. I don't even know how they did the special effects. Like it is so lifelike with the ice falling, with like the dancing, with the clothes looking really cool, layering.
The layering is outerwear. Really good. Yeah.
I just like.
Yeah, and you know we were shitting on Ricardo T sheet for a while, being like, what the fuck is this?
So like the maybe the show just didn't show it off properly.
But you know how it is. There's the runway show, and then there's all those other bits which aren't necessarily in the shows, but in the stores. Yeah. And that's what this is. And I think that you talk about it being like this British label, really significant one, and it is really like the most well-known British label out there, internationally known. Not saying that, there's other ones that don't exist, but it's the most famous one.
Yeah, you think British fashion brand, you think Burberry.
Burberry, yeah. And I think what that video does and what these other images from the campaigns do is show a more honest, more widely known version of Britain. Because outside of the UK, I think there's a very much a perception that, like, you know how it's like Americans think all Brits are really posh?
Yeah.
But really, in Europe, Britain is known as like the chabbiest country in Europe. Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, I think a lot of people's perception is that we all live in London. We all sort of live this sort of Mayfair, sort of Notting Chelsea, lifestyle, and that's a really small percentage of the population.
Yeah.
Most people who live in London, like, aren't raised that way. Like,
most people who live in London live in streets like that video. Or shop in places that look exactly like the scene we saw in that video. And I think it's exporting a more realistic view of what Britain is like. And not only this is their conundrum, because when you get to, if you're like a fancy luxury brand that's, charging hundreds and thousands for clothing, there comes a time when you want to be like seen as accessible, but you don't want to be too accessible, because then everyone has your stuff.
Or alienate the people who don't want you to be accessible, which is actually really topical for what our main topic is today. But we'll post the Burberry campaign and some of the pictures of the Marcus Rashford stuff on our Instagram, because it's really cool and people should check it out.
Yep, definitely. So
awesome. Well, so my fashion story is that Prince Charles has just released a clothing line.
Is it a clothing line? Are you talking about Utes?
Yeah, it's a collaboration, but the headlines go that he's launched a clothing line.
You know what? I will say this. I'm not a defender of the royal family, but I've always had a little bit of a soft spot for Charles.
You like Charlie.
and you know what it is? I think recently I've come to understand what I like about him. It's very superficial, okay? But I've always thought he's had like a good sense of style.
Yeah, he's a really smart dressing man.
He's always wearing a double-breasted blazer. Love a double-breasted blazer. And he's always got a pinky ring. And I love a man with a pinky ring. I really do. I think it like elevates your style in a really like simple way. And I realized, I was like, that is why I like Prince Charles.
Oh my god.
So this makes sense to me.
Well, I have a lot of like more context, I guess, for him as well in all the sort of documentaries I've watched. And I think that he was kind of at the end-ish. Obviously, loads of stuff's happened with the royal family recently. But he was kind of, I guess, the last generation of that tough love. Like, I know it still exists somewhat.
Yeah.
But like, he was part of a generation where like, the Queen would have gone away for a month and the way she would have greeted her son was with a handshake. Like, emotion was not something that they showed to one another even.
His parents are old school, and especially his father as well. Yeah.
And like, you don't tell somebody well done. You don't tell somebody like, I'm proud of you. And because he's a future king, he got told what to do. He wasn't allowed to do what he wanted to do. So like, for instance, he was studying in Cambridge. And then because they wanted to give him the Moncler, is that the right way of saying it?
I don't know.
The title, Prince of Wales, they made him go live in Wales for a few months to learn Welsh.
Yeah.
And like, that was against like his wishes. And like, obviously, yes, there's like, he's got an important role, but like, imagine just, you have no choice. Like, I don't like it when my parents used to tell me to tidy my room, like, and he's been told he's got to go learn another language because he's gonna be this title, and whether he likes it or not, it's not an easy thing. but I digress. He's launched a collection with Ukes at Net-a-Porter, and his quote is, "I have always believed in the buy once, buy well philosophy," which I guess is true, especially if you're the royal family. You can't be having a shopping spree. And also, can we also add, he's in great shape, so I bet his suits have lasted him really well. Like, for an older gentleman,
he doesn't have like a belly or anything.
Belly. Yeah. So yeah, very interesting. A very unusual collaboration.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people... Look, I don't know... Like, some people don't like the royal family and some people love the royal family, but, like, I don't actually know anybody who would go out and buy something because Prince Charles has his name to it.
I think
foreigners would more than Brits.
Yeah, that could very well be a thing. I think it's a really good experiment, to be honest, and I think it kind of makes sense. I think it's also about encouraging British production and design, is it not? Is it something? It's kind of like an initiative to some extent, but I don't know. Is the line called the Prince of Wales? What's it called?
I actually don't know. Probably.
Because I can see. Okay, you remember a few years ago when that film came out and it was called, like, oh God, what was it called? And they were all like really well dressed. It's not the Huntsman. They were really like well dressed spies or something.
Yeah. The Huntsman.
Yeah, and
there was something Prince. Yeah.
They had a line and a store in Savile Row, and they would sell all these like kind of old school suits, you know, like almost like East End gangster type, you know, suits. And I could kind of see whoever bought into that would find. But
this is women's clothing as well.
It's women's as well. It's got men's though.
The model that I'm looking at in the photo is wearing women's clothing, as in like the dummy.
Yeah, I can still.
It's a double-breasted suit.
Oh.
It looks very much like his in the photo. It's a mixed. It's I guess potentially it's unisex.
I can see that there's going to be a market, and I think especially maybe like the Asian market. Yeah, that would like to buy into.
They love British royal family, like more than we do.
And it's not like the stuff is really old fashioned.
No, like the stuff is decent. But yeah, I also think, and I'm not the biggest lover of Prince Charles, but like I just also have a lot of like I don't really have a thought either way really. Like I know that people got split with the Prince Charles Diana thing and what side they were on, but like I see it from both sides that they just both weren't happy, full stop.
Yeah.
But he's very forward thinking, Charles. He has been talking about climate change since like the 90s and championing it, and no one wanted to listen then, and we're now like finally taking notice of climate change. He's very I think he's very forward thinking, so I wouldn't mind betting that this is like a really inspired sort of decision he's made.
And you know what? He's been waiting a very long time to become king.
Can you imagine? Like,
he's been on the longest internship ever.
I don't know if this is blasphemy or like I'm gonna go to the Tower of London for saying this.
You mean treason?
That's the one, treason. But dude, imagine the Queen. Sad day when the Queen dies, of course. Like,
That's his mum.
What if Prince Charles literally dies like the following year, or like, you know, like, or he dies really soon after, like he's waited this long, and like, come on, their health is tip top, but it would be like a sod's law thing. He's waited all this time. He's in his 70s. And like, what if he just gets like 4 years at it and then he's gone?
Yeah. I think he's just trying to live his best life right now. And
I think he takes his role as the Prince of Wales really seriously. He's done such great things for charity with the Prince's Trust and stuff. It's got to be a weird thing that like your entire life has been preparing you for something that like you're 70 years old and you still haven't got the job.
And to some extent, you must be thinking, what's the point of even starting something big if I won't be able to continue it like I would want to?
Yeah.
So, anyway, I'm going to definitely look up some more of those pictures because I've seen the story headlines, but I haven't actually delved into what the collection looks like. But I'm sure there's a lot of, isn't there like Prince of Wales tartan and all that? Isn't that a thing?
That is a thing. There's basically like a sort of checked suit that they, in the like launch picture that I've seen, there's sort of a checked suit for a woman, which is a double-breasted and wide leg trousers, which looks really nice actually. I can see a jumpsuit, a navy jumpsuit that sort of looks like a bit like it's got lapels, so it looks sort of very smart. And then men's, there's a nice cardi. A nice little rust red colour cardi, a very nice camel coat, and a cream polo neck, sort of roll neck, thick knit jumper. Yeah, lovely stuff. We'll share it on the Insta.
Brill.
We interrupt this broadcast to remind you, go follow us on Instagram, Style Over Substance Pod. Shoot us an email, styleoversubstancepeak@gmail.com. Find us on YouTube, find us on Twitter. We've got all the links on our Instagram. You know what to do.
So let's jump into this week's topic, which I think is a really interesting one. I think it would be nice to do more kind of like brand deep dives.
For sure. Like as we were talking about Burberry, I was like, it'd be really cool to talk about Burberry's fashion story and its trajectory.
Yeah.
Wow, I butchered that. Trajectory.
So this week we're going to be focusing on Bottega Veneta. And I think this is a brilliant one to start off with. My friend Elizabeth, shout out to Liz, suggested this topic to discuss. And the reason why I think it's so good is because Bottega Veneta has shot to kind of the headlines. It's always been
Instagram fame.
Instagram fame.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's been
millennial
around for a long
fame,
time.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Even though it's been around for decades and
been well loved and had like a really loyal customer base for that time.
Exactly. And it's now that us lay people, us broke-ass lay people are seeing and appreciating the brand for the first time. Lots of people buying into the brand for the first time. And it's really, it's making waves.
Yeah, so correct me if I'm wrong, but really what launched them, I think it was maybe 2 years ago now, is the clutch bag. So, well, again, all photos will be on our social media, you know it. Yeah. But this bag basically sold out everywhere. And it's a beautiful clutch.
Yeah, it is.
But like, it's also not a revolutionary clutch. But I think the thing that people love about Bottega, and it's definitely something that I actually really like in a brand, is I don't want to be a walking billboard for a company. And so they create logoless products and that should theoretically be instantly recognizable as Bottega, which is what this clutch is. It's like such a beautiful leather. It's pleated really nicely in the shape of it. It's massive.
It comes in a number of sizes, but it is
but like the
quite
famous
big for a
or
clutch.
popular size is like really big. But yeah, it sold out and it sort of created waves, and it like every platform. Like I remember when I was doing some research for work last year, we went into the store and again having to pretend that we're browsing, but really we're like snooping. And the wait list for this bag was crazy. And it was unprecedented. It was like obviously they've been around for a while, but like they couldn't have predicted it. None of their products did this ever.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right in pointing out that the pouch, very soft leather, very relaxed shape pouch clutch thing was really their standout piece. And that was driven by the fact that in 2018, Daniel Lee became their creative designer or creative creative director. And that ushered in this new era of what we call new Bottega. And I think you would probably agree with me that this was happening at a time where Celine, the creative director of Celine, had left. And she had ushered in this period of like cool minimalism.
Yeah.
But it was also like really wearable pieces. And she just had a cult following. So when, for life of me, cannot remember, but the old YSL creative director became creative director of Celine, and the kind of look completely changed, and Celine wasn't what it was like loved for. Bottega Veneta and Daniel Lee kind of quickly moved into that space of being sleek, minimalist, modern designs.
Yeah.
That's kind of what happened. Daniel Lee, just to let you know, is from Bradford.
Oof.
Bradford boy.
Love it.
Yeah. Heading up this really big Italian luxury brand. And you've touched on social media. And that's really how many of us know about it. Bottega Veneta is...
We've seen all our influencers.
We've seen every influencer with the... Let's just list off some of the products that we've probably seen. So we've got the pouch bag.
Yeah.
Then we've got those
square toe mules.
Yeah, those
that are like
mules.
potentially woven. And I'm telling you now, Ego Fashion,
Not to drag them.
has like 1,000 versions of them. Every website does, but I just see this Ego Fashion like sponsored post on Instagram like daily.
Yeah, so those are called the Lido sandals. Then we've got the much beloved stretch mesh sandals with the chain around the ankle. They're also square toed. Those are the ones that were like, what the fuck is this? Like, how am I supposed to wear it? I always think your toe will just like move through the front of the shoe. I don't know, but influencers manage to pull it off. Then we've got the padded cassette bag, you know, the square one with that famous Bottega weaving, which is
so the weaving is like consistent throughout like a lot of these styles now. It's just been applied, and it's a very, and they do weaving like to the extreme. Like it's really thick, wide, or really thin. They have just like done any weaving you can imagine. Yeah,
exactly. So the weaving is actually like super important when it comes to Bottega Veneta. That is their signature.
It's almost like their monogram.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's their monogram. They don't use, as you know, you've mentioned, they don't have logos on the outside of the bag. It's only on the inside where you'll see it's Bottega Veneta. So those who know that the weaving is like a nod to this is Bottega Veneta. And Daniel Lee has, they've had it on purses, bags, everything. And I think for the longest time, it was more of like a thinner style. So Daniel Lee has taken that weaving and made it like jumbo size almost. And it's made their products into a more like modern version of what they've kind of always done, don't you think?
Yeah, completely. It's definitely updated it. And like you said, it's gone from like this really like skinny, sleek weaving and just like added that modern touch. Like, hang on, okay, yes, that's your staple, but like let's update that. A bit like how, you know, like Burberry updates its monogram and like all of that stuff, and like Louis Vuitton plays on theirs and tries to update it, and you change your logo and change your font of maybe the logo to create a new pattern and all of that stuff. That's just, I think he's come in and injected a real freshness that I don't even think the company thought it needed. It was doing fine, but like I think the figures are that like despite lockdown and despite coronavirus, it's just on the up. Like it's the most sought after thing. And like these clutches are expensive. This is a pricey, very high quality leather brand. Like I remember them when I was talking to the guy in the shop and this is, again, we always explain this, but I think it's really important for people to know, when you're buying luxury, you don't just pay for the bag, you're paying for an experience. And this guy in the shop knew like the process of the leathers, how it's like drummed, all of it, like he knew it, and he was so knowledgeable on all of it. And he was just really, you could tell he was really excited to be working for the brand and kind of really happy on its
trajectory. Yeah, I'll say the word for you.
You can say that word for me. Yeah. It's like suddenly saliva just enters my mouth when I want to say that word, or my tongue gets in the way.
Nice. Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome. But yeah, so it's basically, it's just the quality is up there with the likes of a Celine, like in my opinion anyway. It is such quality leather, the designs, and it's all like Italy, just really beautiful made products. And it's kind of really exciting that they've joined the leagues. And yes, there's like knockoffs everywhere, and the square toe is now something you are behold on everything. But yeah, I guess one of the main things we wanted to talk about in relation to them was their mission statement was very much minimal. We don't really do loads of marketing or branding. We have a loyal customer base and our designs speak for themselves. But with this newfound fame, they're trying to negotiate how they can be both, how they can appeal to the influencer and newfound appreciation, but also not alienate the people who are the reason they're still here.
Yeah. I think this is a good time to probably start on a bit of the history of Bottega Veneta, to kind of give a bit of context of what they were like as a brand, what they were doing, and then talk about, as you were saying, like what's next for them. And how do they negotiate their not their newfound fame, I don't want to say that, but their new hype and their new popularity? And can they juggle both its reputation and its newfound fame, basically? But in terms of its history, so it was started in 1966 by Michele Tadai and Renzo Rengiaro. Please don't come at me with pronunciation, but... Yeah, so those two, and I think Bottega Veneta actually means Venetian shop, really basic name. Yeah. So yeah, it started in the 60s, and as Scarlett's mentioned, had a really loyal fan base. It was understated, but really luxurious. Like, you've talked about craftsmanship, and that's what they were about. I think Jackie Onassis used to wear their bags and their stuff, and then through the 90s and 2000s, I think the brand had a bit of a stagnation. Not to say that they weren't making money, but it was just like todding along sort of thing. And in 2001, the brand brought on Thomas Mayer, who was enlisted to kind of revive it and perk up the brand a bit. And this is the time when Bottega Veneta was a luxury brand, but he made it into like top tier. And you've spoken about price already. Like, Bottega Veneta's pouch is like a £3,000 bag. This is not like, I compare it to Gucci in that they're owned by the same company at the moment, and Gucci is just coming out of its like mega popularity phase. Their most popular bag, the Dionysus, is like £1,700. Still a lot of money, but it's not like Bottega Veneta is there with, like, in terms of pricing, like the Dior bags, you know, like £3,000, £4,000. And so it was during that period of the 2000s, or sorry, I should say from 2001 onwards, that Thomas was like trying to make it into a more substantially recognized or appreciated brand. And it was in that period when he was at the helm of the creative direction that they started making 1 billion euros annually. So this is like a lot of money.
And also like to be sort of on the down low
and be having that kind of like money, like turnover is wild.
Yeah,
because it was not a household name.
Exactly. So they were making a lot of money, and that says something about their customer base. People were buying into it.
They finally acknowledged like their positioning in the market correctly. That's one of the hardest things for a brand to do, and that's why we see brands constantly change. That's why Mulberry suddenly like upped their prices. It's why Gucci, I think, has slowly but surely tried to kind of lower their prices, because they know like younger people are kind of
wanting to buy into it.
That they appeal to. And positioning's so important, because like you have there's a snobbery in luxury fashion. There really is. And I think that's a really cool thing that they've kind of readjusted their position, and that helped them go for it to be a stronger brand.
And I think also at that time, which probably helped them, is they became a bit more international, like opening up more stores. And that always helps a brand. You kind of have to make that push to grab those customers. You can't wait on those customers to start buying into your brand to then set up stores sometimes. Does that make sense?
And also the 90s was occupied, like the 90s was just all about like, there was a movement in the 90s. You know, it was like, it was Calvin Klein. It was like, there was a very specific like brands that were hot and not. And it must have been a really hard time to ride that wave if you weren't one of the hot brands.
Yeah, exactly. So in the 2000s they started doing really well, and I found a quote and I thought it was really good. He was, in regards to them not putting logos on the outside of their bag, Thomas said that when your own initials are enough, you don't need a need for brands and logos on the outside of your stuff, which just
that's cool.
It is pretty cool, isn't it? It's basically like, we're talking about like some old school wealth here. We're talking about old money, not like new money sort of thing. And so then he was let go only a few years ago. He spent like 17 years at the brand.
Wow.
Let go by Kering, who is the umbrella group. And they wanted to find someone who could, again, inject some new life into the brand. So that's where we find ourselves now with Daniel Lee. And I think that, as you were saying, the stuff is now like playing on what they've always done but made it fresher. I don't think that they're interested as a brand they're trying to be trendless, maybe. I think that's what kind of strikes me. And I think, like, when we talk about modernizing the brand, what I've noticed is that, like, the pouch bag, it's a shape that we've seen before, probably made with nice materials and in like really cool colors, to be honest. But that gold chain that goes with it really plays into like a lot of gold layering jewelry, that jewelry kind of trend that we're seeing. And the thin gold chain that used to go around the ankles of those mesh square-toed sandals, those kind of touches are playing into accessories design that we're seeing now. Yeah, so I think that is a huge part of their popularity at the moment. But we'd have to talk about social media to talk about where we see them kind of heading in the near future.
Yeah, and it's a really, I say this like I'm like a broken record, but hype isn't always a great thing. Like, I think I mentioned in a previous episode that like LK Bennett, for example, really struggled with the hype of Kate Middleton's shoes like taking off. And I think it was also the lady who designed like her engagement dress, and she suddenly had so many orders that she couldn't handle it, and so then had to adjust her business to cater for it, because of course you want to ride that wave. Like, which one of us wouldn't want to ride that wave? But at some point that wave dies, and then you've scaled up your company to something that was just a hype. And so a really difficult thing for any fashion company to negotiate is catering to this hype. But I think that also the waitlist thing, it's very Hermes that they have for their styles. And actually, we've talked about this before, that like, I definitely think that's a very great way of managing production.
And
for these like really high level companies, like imagine, so it retails for £3,000, and we've talked before about how people destroy bags, because if this is a bag that is always on demand, but like that color for whatever instance hasn't sold, or like whatever it is, you're not going to want to like put that on a discount. So that's when things get destroyed. So like, to obviously prevent stuff like that happening, the waitlist culture, I think, is really cool. And also it builds more demand. Like,
you mentioned briefly about how even during coronavirus, Bottega Veneta's growth and sales have been doing really well. And
like,
the same with,
even if you took coronavirus away, those set figures would be good.
Yeah, exactly. When you mention Hermes now, basically in Q3, so reported in October, Bottega Veneta had 21% growth and Hermes had 7% growth. And these are brands that are more expensive than your YSL or your Saint Laurent, as it's called, your Gucci's and
Fendi, all of that.
Yeah, exactly. These are like really expensive top tier brands, and they are probably, I wouldn't be surprised if they're like outperforming the other ones, the cheaper brands. So I think the price of it is not deterring anyone, and maybe that is how they negotiate hype, in that you stay expensive and you stay limited.
Yeah, which I think, like, I personally, if I were to ever have a fashion label, I think that's the kind of thing I would do. Is limit, like, almost everything is limited, and that kind of creates, especially when you stand for quality, because it's really easy to get swept away. And we've mentioned before, and we all know I'm the biggest Chanel fan, so I'm not like digging them out, but their quality has fallen over the years. And so if you stand for craftsmanship, like, the only way to maintain that is to not just produce endless amounts of stuff. Like, there's beautiful videos of how Hermes, like the Kelly, is just all done by hand. Like, there's literally not a machine there obviously is a machine inside, but like, it's stitched by hand. So like, and you're never going to be able to mass produce that, because you could have 1,000 workers, but like, you can still only do however many. But yeah, I think with the Instagram nation, oh my gosh, sorry, my computer wants me to restart. No, sorry. With the Instagram nation, it's a really, really difficult one, because it also obviously inspires loads of copies, because we're seeing it everywhere. And also, like, now we know about it. We lay people, like you said, we know about it. So like, we want it too. Yeah. And it's that thing of like, so how do they manage the fact that then suddenly that's such a huge platform, and like, and all celebrities, like, like, not A-list celebrities, they're not immune to the wait list. Like, people I follow are like glad when they become number one on the wait list and get it. Like, it's seriously like in demand, and it's now become almost like a statement, isn't it? If you've managed to get your hands on one of these products, it is like a trophy. It is like like, I don't know, it shows like some form of success or like status.
And I think that I want to go back to comparing it with Gucci, for the reason that Gucci did the social media thing really well, and it blew up. Everyone bought something Gucci. I have Gucci stuff. Like,
dude, Gucci's
they were killing it.
They had
like for the longest time.
Yeah,
Gucci is the best performing brand of the Kering umbrella group, and I mean, like, the thing is with that is that it's a lower price point, which I've mentioned before. But when you bought Gucci, which was not hard to come by, and you bought it, everyone on the street knew that it was Gucci. Now, you know, their sales are diminishing a bit, but that's natural. That's going to happen. Not everyone
Ebbs
can be
and flows,
top dog
yeah.
forever. They're still making money. Don't worry about Gucci. But it's so much more obvious on the street that Gucci may be oversaturating the market a bit. With Bottega Veneta, moving forward as they become more popular and do well and selling more bags and whatever, you still kind of got to be in the know and be like, I see you over there with your pouch. I see you over there with your woven sandals. I see, like, you've got to know that is Bottega Veneta, and like give that person a nod, and like it's not going to appear visually on the streets or to the layperson that this brand is everywhere. And I think when you talk about exclusivity, you want what you've bought to be seemingly exclusive, even if it's not.
Definitely.
So I think that's why maybe they might have a really long run still of being top dog.
Yeah, and like I think the perfect example that you were like alluding to is the lack of logo means that like someone who's not openly bothered about fashion walks down the street, they see some double C's, they see the Dior logo, they see Burberry, like the Burberry plaid, they see the Gucci monogram canvas, they then see like a Louis Vuitton Neverfull, they see, or like whatever it is, then they see like the Gucci G on like another bag, they see like a C&D elsewhere, like they see all these like the YSL, like all of that stuff you can see on all these bags.
Yeah.
And like you'll be like, gosh, there's a lot of like it will stand out. There's a lot of like one if you're endlessly seeing it. And like at the moment, like the big thing is Gucci, or like even if it's not the same bag, you're still seeing that Louis Vuitton like logo everywhere, like the monogram canvas. But when it's not got a logo and it's not even really got hardware other than like obviously chains and stuff like that, but like nothing where you'd go, gosh, I keep seeing that bag. And because there's so many colors and it is still exclusive. Yes, they've had a lot of sales, but it's still exclusive. And
it's still very understated just in general.
And also like I guess theoretically there's copies and stuff, but like it's not something where you're like, oh my God, like everybody's got that bag, like I'm not going to get it now. Because like my main thing, like I'm not on money bags, but like I've really been lusting after Gucci stuff because the hype worked on me. And I was like, damn, like there's so many cool things, but I kind of like, part of me was holding off wanting to even like try and save up for it, because I was like, you know what? The fad will die. And then it's that thing of, do you then really want to wear it? And am I buying it just because there's a fad? And it's that important thing of like, how many people have the Gucci double G belt? And you kind of see people being like, oh, you bought into that and you were like part of that hype too. And there's an association. And I think that the good thing that comes with that logo is no one's going to be like, oh, you're part of the Bottega hype, because also that there's like a whole part of Bottega that's not included in the hype, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder if that's going to really help them.
Yeah, and off the back of that, like I am definitely not the sort of person to be like, oh, I don't want to buy it because it's like old or everyone has it. Like I'm a big believer in, if you want something and you genuinely like it and you like it because it fits your style and it's something that you're going to use, don't buy something for hype, but also don't not buy something because it's too popular. Like buy what you love, you genuinely love, and understand what suits you. I think you should. And still, even if something is not fashionable, quote unquote fashionable anymore, but you still love it, I think you should still wear it. So, but having said that, things with a very distinctive pattern or logo, I think or a very distinctive look. For example, Gucci was all about maximalism, and it was all about being very bold. And I loved it. And I thought it was great. And it took the brand in a completely different direction. But the more fussy something is, the quicker it can age, I think. So it's very obvious that when we just look at what's being released now, it's obvious that the Dionysus bag, it's like their most, I think it's probably their best performing bag, is a few years old.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Still wear it, still love your bag. But I think with the cassette bag or Bottega Veneta or the pouch bag that they have, in 10 years' time, it's still going to have a place in your wardrobe, I think. And I think that's what might give it longevity.
Yeah, definitely. Because like you said, like we've just ridden a wave, and I think it's starting to like come towards a little bit of the end of it. Like I'm a big believer that trends isn't really a thing, but hypes are at the moment. And also like Instagram makes things take off. But like the 90s revival of canvas monogram on all brands has been like a really big thing. Like Dior helped kick it back off with like all of their bags just coming in the embroidered variations, like the saddle bag, all of that stuff. Like they reignited all this sort of 90s style stuff. And like that's not to say it's not nice and people shouldn't stop wearing it in 10 years time, because also the thing about fashion is like that hype will come back in 10 years, like most likely. But like you said, like you can really put an age on those bags, even if like some of them have been designed like maybe last year, but like it's inspired by the 90s, so they look like, and they want them to look like that, you know. But these are kind of like timeless, and yes, of course we'll associate them, I'm sure, with this time, but they are very timeless. Like, because there's no hardware, you know, like there was a wave of rose gold a few years back, and every company like added rose gold to their hardware list for a little while. There's nothing that's really age defining, which is actually like what a cool brand they are. Like they have no logo.
I think some of their shoes will age though. Some of their shoes are a bit dodgy.
I think the square toe is a thing. It's a time. It's a movement.
Yeah.
But to have a handbag that, like, for sure, you pick up the camera bag or the pouch clutch in 20 years' time, you're still going to look chic. And, like, no one's going to be like, isn't that, like, old? It's just going to be, you know, I think they've done some really, really cool branding and design stuff.
That actually like kind of pinged an idea in my head of like, what would be Bottega's downfall? What is it doing now that maybe means it won't be popular in a few years? Can it continue the way it has been for the past year? And I mean, although classic and timeless, their other weaved leather pieces, like the wallets and the bags and everything like that, for a while, the brand was seen as like an old person's brand.
Yeah, like woven leathers not being like, it's quite granny, it's quite old fashioned. But, you know, that was before, you know, we could easily like print on stuff, you know, like it was like the only way to make something a little bit more interesting. Or actually, you saying that, I wonder, because there's so many few factors that go into, I'm going to say the bags in particular for now, because shoes are different. Shoes, you can update them with different fabrics, are much easier for it to be different looking or change the shape of it ever so slightly. But like for the clutch, because there's no hardware, it's only leather that they could, or like what they make it out of, that can keep it exciting. So are we in 5-10 years time going to be like, yeah, we get it, like it's just a plain leather bag? Or there's this, it's going to be harder for them to be as inventive with updating it, but maybe they don't need to and all of that stuff. But it will be harder because there's fewer components involved. Like with the weave, after a while, like you've kind of done the modern update of the weave. So like, and there's only so many ways you can weave.
Do you think people just get bored of it?
Potentially. I think that's hype. I think they're smashing it now, and in a few years people will have either bought it and so they're not going to be buying into it again, or will be sort of over it a little bit. But I think it might be harder. They'll have to be much more innovative on how they update these classics.
Yeah, and I think from someone who's outside of like their customer base, simply because I just do not earn enough to be like a Bottega shopper, like every week going in and buying something new. But as someone who appreciates it from the outside, I would think that this new era of Bottega, Daniel Lee's version, hasn't necessarily alienated their core customer base. I think that if I was someone in my 60s, 70s, and had been buying from them for a very long time, I think that there's still a lot of stuff that I would still be interested in buying.
Yeah, I think they'll just lose their Instagram millennial followers, you know, and which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because that will help the brand have another hype down the line. Yeah.
And sometimes maybe these older shoppers or more loyal customers kind of appreciate that there's like a newfound appreciation for what they love as well. I don't know. Interesting point. But yeah, what do you think is next for Bottega?
I think they'll have an interesting update, or scale up or down like some of these classics. But yeah, I just think because they're not a prisoner to logos. I just think that they're quite lucky that they can just find some really interesting materials or shapes. Yeah, like just a new clutch in a totally different shape, or like make it super tiny, or like an even like bigger style, or add a handle. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I think they might play around with that kind of a thing. But I also wouldn't mind betting that they just kind of leave it as it is, like somewhat.
Yeah.
I mean, that won't be what's like their chief merchandise officer will be saying. They'll be like, no, let's do some more iterations. Like, let's like monopolize on this. But
yeah, definitely.
I think they'll just continue on a path a bit like Celine, where they'll find another bag. You know, like when Celine did that 3-pouch bag that was literally just like 3 essentially like very, very basic like pouches, just with a single zip that like basically connected together, like, and then you could wear it as 1, 2, or 3 pouches. And it was like the most simple basic bag, but really nicely made, obviously. I think they'll find a similar thing to that. I think they'll
I think you're right in saying that. What I hear from what you're saying is they're just going to continue be that old Celine and dominate that part of the style market.
Yeah.
That really no one else is doing. I mean, you've got like Zara. But
that's because it's
like,
copying like Celine and Bottega.
Yeah, but other than like kind of places, high street places where you might be able to find some like simple stuff like that, if you're into buying luxe and it being fashion forward, then I think they're going to be your go-to. They're probably, I would hazard a guess, they're going to probably push more ready to wear. Not because I think people are going to buy the ready to wear. I went on their website and they had a shirt going for 15,000 euros. I know. And they had a dress going for like 30,000, and it was not even couture. It was it was.
Was it bedazzled?
It sure was.
Okay, good. At least there's a reason.
It was like lime green bedazzled. It was cool. But anyway, I think that the ready to wear is going to be a way to frame their bags in a new light.
Yeah.
So they're going to have the pouch for years to come. They're going to have the cassette bag for years to come. They're going to have all this stuff for years to come. and to still pique your interest and be like, this is how you can style it this season. They're going to come out with more ready to wear for you to see it on the runway together with new pieces. But I mean, the ready to wear is not going to be like what is going to drive sales. I mean, at the moment, I think leather goods count for 85% of their revenue.
But
so
that tends to be the case for most brands.
Exactly.
And then the weird thing is, like, the emphasis will be though on the ready to wear for all brands, because that is just like obviously the core of fashion.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's almost that the shows and the ready to wear collections are done to drive the brand as a whole. The look, how you style it, how you could be a walking billboard.
Yeah. I mean, they do have this really amazing lime green fringe skirt. Have you seen it with that long cardigan? Check it out. It's cool. It's really, it's not the most practical, but is the pouch practical? Not really, no. But yeah. So anyway, my kind of final question for you is if and what would you buy from Bottega?
I think potentially the pouch, the slouchy pouch, only because I genuinely think I wouldn't get that large size because, well, that's not me. More like what I'm going to have my lipstick and card just swimming around in there. Because I wouldn't be chic enough to take that as like a work bag. I carry too much crap around to do that. And I just think it's a really beautiful product, and it's something that like you could just use forever more and pass down to people, and it just be a really nice bag to have. Yeah, I think it would be that, or like not even the cassette camera bag, but just like they've got like a nice like boho like shopper that's just like woven, maybe just something a bit like that where like it's just really cool and to be a bit difficult and not get like one of the hero products, but be like, yeah, I've got Bottega. Because like their products are just so nice. Like they're just so nice and classy. How about you?
I would also go for the pouch. And I mean, it just shows the hype has worked on that.
Yeah, it has.
I really feel like it's giving me collector's item vibes.
Yeah. For sure. I think it very well could join the ranks of this, like, is an investment and it's going to increase in value.
Yeah, I think
it could.
Yeah, same. I think that if they focused on keeping it really premium, really exclusive, they could be.
So we'll never get our hands on it.
We'll never. They could be like the Hermeses of the world. There's no reason why they couldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, they've already got like this, I think, school in Italy, which is focused on preserving the craftsmanship of that leather weaving and stuff. And if they focus on that sort of thing and continue to make really sleek products, just like Hermes, they have these like hero pieces that come in so many different variations, but it's the same shape and there's wait list and they're really expensive and hard to come by. There's no reason why Bottega Veneta can't continue on that same path and find that's their niche. But yeah, I would get the pouch. We
can have a pouch outing.
Yeah, I would, and I would treat it as a collector's, gift it to someone on my deathbed. I don't know.
You don't know how important this was one time.
Yeah, back in 2020 when the world was crumbling.
This was the most valuable thing you could own.
If the market crashes enough, I might trade it for like bread or something.
Oh, Lord help us.
But that's all I've got on Bottega and hype culture for this particular brand at this particular time. You got anything else to add?
I think we've covered it.
Okay. Cool. Thanks for listening, guys, for another week. follow us on Instagram. We're going to post all these pictures and stuff, so you can actually vote on what we should do. A little bit of a poll, what Bottega Veneta item, and vote on kind of thoughts on where you think this brand is going. But in either case, have a good week, guys. I've been Nim.
And I've been Scarlett.